we can't sell people marketing. You either want to market and you're looking for the best vendor to work with, or you just don't, and you don't allocate a budget for it because you're all above that stuff.
If I really wanted to make money, I'd probably go buy a convenience store, but I don't want to be the guy that sells alcohol and tobacco to people. I like improving people's lives. I like making their homes better. Don't be scared of it, but learn everything you can. And remember, I live by this rule. I try to live by this rule. I have to remind myself sometimes, but my only competition is myself.
Hello, friends. I'm Adam Loveridge, and welcome to the Home Services Marketing Podcast, From Growth to Acquisition. I'm the owner and founder of Blue Forge Marketing. We are a home services marketing agency specializing in heating and air conditioning, plumbing, remodeling, and garage door contractors. For more information about Blue Forge Marketing, visit us online at blueforgemarketing.com. Hello, and welcome to the Home Services Marketing Podcast, From Growth to Acquisition. My name is Adam Loveridge with Blue Forge Marketing, and I'm very happy to be joined here today by Corey Eckert. Corey is with Alpine Ductless out of Olympia, Washington. And Corey, thanks so much for joining me here today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Hey, absolutely my pleasure. We got to talk a little bit here before hopping onto this recording. And one of the things that I really loved about our conversation, Corey, and really what you're doing in the Olympia, Washington area is a concept that at least is near and dear to my heart, and something that I've seen as a marketer now for the past, few decades really make a difference. And that is, that there are riches in the niches. And Alpine Ductless is one of those types of companies that really just focuses on a single service, single product, and a single niche. And so I'm really excited to talk with you today about that strategy, really just becoming a product expert, if you will. But before we get into any of that, take us back here a few years and talk to me about how you got started in this business.
I had been in the construction industry since the late 80s. Had my own remodeling companies. I was a home builder. Basically, I'd been at that for years. I had worked for remodeling companies as production manager, things like that. The recession came, and at the same time, I was learning a lot about green, efficient homes, better insulation, better heating systems, better ventilation systems. And I knew about ductless at that point, but I hadn't really seen them used. And at the point, everybody was just using them as kind of a one-room solution, or if they remodeled their attic, they put one up there because you didn't have to run extra ductwork. You didn't have to resize your heating system. And they were thought of as a one-room solution. And I stumbled across a company out of Portland, Oregon that was teaching about them. And they wanted, at the time, the idea was that I would install it as a builder, and they would come and do the final firing off, if you will, where you pump down the line sets and make sure the refrigerant is correct and all of that. And that didn't intrigue me. As a builder, I'm going to hire a sub to do all that. But as a business, I thought, this is kind of cool. And so I talked to them about not doing what they wanted me to do, but doing what they were doing. They were a company that had been doing a lot of residential installs, and I talked to them about it, and they agreed to buy 30 systems from them, or actually 20, but I ended up buying 33. But for that, they showed some of their sales information. And so we were buying everything from them, and we kind of got started, and I didn't know the first thing about a dealer that sold, ductwork and all that stuff. I mean, not really. I didn't have accounts with any of them. Pretty soon, those guys started reaching out to me, and we got started. We actually installed 6 systems in the first 5 months. Only 3 of them did we sell to customers. We put 3 in for ourselves. I had a partner who was a Fortune 1000 sales and marketing consultant. So I was the contractor, he was the marketing guy, and we started putting together a system. And I mentioned this to you earlier, but since we had never been in the heating contractor box, we never had to get out of the box. We created our own box. And we did it different. And ductless is actually very different than standard stuff. Bigger is not better. You have to size them right. You have to run line sets from the outdoor unit to the indoor unit. And most heating guys have learned how to fire off the line sets, but they haven't figured out how a home is constructed to run those line sets and where they can drill and where they can't. And so a lot of it was unique. And we were just in a very prime place. I was the contractor. I knew that side of it. My partner, Mike, knew the sales and marketing side, and we just kind of took off. First person we hired was a salesman.
I love that. And it sounds like your experience in construction then really kind of made you uniquely qualified to be able to install these mini split systems because you know where to drill the holes, right?
Correct. And since there was no ductwork, we didn't have to know anything about ductwork. We just had to learn how to get these copper pipes vacuumed right and release the refrigerant. So the heating side of ductless, the knowledge that you need about heating is, I don't want to say it's simple and not pretty vast, because I've learned that it is vast, but to get started, I really just had to make sure I was vacuuming them down correctly and firing them off correctly.
Gotcha. Now you mentioned, and maybe this is more for edification of our listeners, even who, are not in the HVAC space, but you mentioned that when it comes to mini splits, that you really don't want to oversize them. And I find that interesting. And I'd love you to tell me more about that, because I know that I have a traditional forced air, central air, system, which is really, really common here in Utah, with, harsh winters and really hot summers and that sort of thing. But when I redid my furnace and AC, like they put a rocket ship out in my backyard, and this thing will cool the house down like so fast that I swear icicles start happening on the walls when I turn my AC on. What's the difference between a traditional forced air system and a mini split system, and why do you not want to oversize a mini split?
Ductless is kind of the term that they've used, but what it really is inverter technology. The idea behind it is that when it first starts and when it ramps up and heats your house up for the first time, if your house is somewhat cold, it uses just as much electricity as anything else. But
Sure.
then once it reaches that temperature, it can slow way down, and it just starts replacing the BTUs that you're losing. So it'll ramp up slowly, it'll ramp down slowly. It keeps your house at a really even temperature, but it never really turns off. And the analogy that I like to use, because everybody understands gas mileage, your system comes on at 100% and it turns off. Mine comes on and stays on, but never works hard, never really turns off. So the gasoline analogy is yours is a Suburban running full throttle to the next stoplight and hitting the brakes. Mine is a Prius on cruise control. I'm doing 40 miles an hour, and I only speed up if I go up a hill, and I back off when I go down a hill. I maintain 40 all the time. And so I get optimum gas mileage. So you're just getting optimum electric. And it was really funny. I have to believe in what I'm selling. So the very first system that we sold was to myself. I put it in my house, and the first night.
Well, you had like 33 units. So, you had to do something, right?
Right. The first night, I asked my wife what she thought, and she goes, well, it's very quiet because I can now hear the refrigerator. But she goes, I'm not sure if it's quite warm enough. Well, my house had cooled down to about 45 degrees while we did the install, because we stole the power from the furnace. So the furnace hadn't been running. So the heat pump was running pretty hard. The next night, she said, this is really comfortable. This feels like the wood-burning furnace I grew up with. But I would sit there for the next couple of weeks, and I'm looking at it, and that head is open, and I knew it was blowing air, and I said, this thing never turns off. And I had been told that they won't, and that's really efficient. But I was just sitting there looking at it going, how can this possibly be efficient? And then I got my power bill, and I was saving, I saved hundreds of dollars my first year.
Wow. So really then, and I love this because I want to start to sort of segue this into talking about marketing, because I know that that's the other big piece that your partner really focuses on. But really then the competitive advantage in ductless, for you at least, is that it is a much more energy efficient way to heat and cool your home.
We're in Washington. We use a lot of cadet heaters and baseboard heaters. A lot of homes were built with those. And on average, we did a study with Tacoma Power where we installed all the ductless mini splits in 24 homes for Habitat for Humanity. They were brand new homes built in 2012 under the Washington 2012 code. And for 2 years, they studied them. And they would turn off the one baseboard heater in the living room once a week. It automatically turned off at Saturday at midnight, and the ductless turned on. And a week later, the ductless turned off and the baseboard turned back on. And they did that for 2 years. I think it was on a grand total of 15 homes that they did the actual study on. And they proved that those homes were saving 47% on average of their total power bill by having that one baseboard turn off and run the ductless.
Wow.
So it didn't matter how many people lived in the house. It didn't matter whether it was a 1-story or a 2-story. The savings were huge. And the beauty of that was that all the homes were built the same way and insulated the same way. So it was a very even study. And when I say 47% was the average, it really didn't vary by more than 1 or 2% on all of the homes.
Wow.
So we can safely say it's a big savings.
How do you portray that? I mean, again, I'm guessing that as you're out talking with potential customers and certainly in your marketing and everything else, I mean, that's got to be something that you guys are focused in on. How do you portray that out to, to homeowners? Are you using like cost calculators and showing the savings, or what is a typical kind of sales process look like there? In terms of, how you portray that out to homeowners?
We don't really try and calculate it out for them because every home is different and every heat system is different and everybody uses theirs different. I've had people that will not get their house above 60 degrees and I've had other people that want to keep it at 78. So the same system could do both of those and be at very different results. We have just explained to them and we show them, we do a lot of third-party verifying. And the third-party verifying we're doing is from our actual utility companies. They're showing graphs of how much you'd use if this was oil or gas, or if you're using electric forced air furnace or electric forced air with a unitary style heat pump, which is the big round one that we normally think of.
Right.
And then we talk also, so we stress that. We also stress that the unitary style, the big round ones, they do sound like a rocket ship taking off. Our normal conversations are 65 to 70 decibels, and those things are 85 to 90. My ductless unit, it's called a side discharge. It doesn't blow out the top, it blows out the side. The side discharge come in at about 56 decibels if they're running on full blast.
So it's like a light conversation then, basically.
Quieter than conversation. I've sat next to one that was running in AC mode. It was a 90-degree day. The head was very close to my sliding glass doors. First one I ever put in. My outdoor unit was actually on my deck, and it was running full blast. And I was sitting next to my aunt and her friend, and we were having a conversation. And I was literally could reach over and touch it. It was right there.
Well, that's awesome.
And the indoor heads are even quieter.
It sounds, Corey, like really then the ductless systems are, have quite a few advantages, certainly in terms of power usage, energy savings, those sorts of things. How do they compare vis-a-vis like a traditional forced air system when it comes to price?
They're actually right about the same price. It's kind of a subjective question depending on what the person buys, because a whole house solution might be an outdoor unit with 2 heads, or it might be an outdoor unit with up to 8 heads. The thing you have to do in selling ductless is you have to talk to the people about how they live in their house. And what I'm getting at is going to just a little bit of physics. Mm-hmm. There's no such thing as warmer air. There's absolute zero, and then there's air with heat in it. And that heat is always trying to find cold air. So if I heat up my living room, but I'm blowing the air through the living room and down a hallway, it's moving down that hallway, and it's moving in to find that cold air in the bedrooms. So I can actually take a 1,500 square foot, some people call them ranchers, we call them a ranch house, but it's that typical house where you've got you walk into the living room, you can see the dining room, the kitchen's kind of behind a wall, but there's a central hallway going down to the bedrooms. If we place the head between the living room and the kitchen, blowing down that hallway, we can do a 1,500 square foot house with no problem. Now, with one head. That's true. And I'm on the western side of Washington, so we have a mild climate. You might need more heads if you're getting down to 20 below, but we've only hit 0 once in the last 10 years.
Gotcha.
So, but we do regularly get down to in the 20s and the mid to low teens, and that system will still work. So you need to do a good heat load calc, and you need to worry about airflow, but you don't need a head in every room. And that's what a lot of my competitors, I loved all these analogies, but I think of ductless as you're a Tesla mechanic. And if you own a Tesla, you're not going to take it to the guy that's been working on your Chevy and Ford your whole life. You want to talk to the Tesla guy. We come up against good heating companies all the time that are still selling lots of unitary stuff, and they have a vent in every room to supply air, and they think you need a head in every room. And it's kind of a funny conversation to convince people that they need less than what the other two guys told them they needed. We just have been at it long enough, we can prove that. And we show them examples of what works, and we save them a lot of money. Not only do we save them money, we have less callback because the system actually works the way it was designed. If you put in too big of one, it will start up and stop just like your regular furnace because it overheats itself and it's too warm.
Okay. Well, that makes perfect sense to me. And let's talk then a little bit about kind of just my favorite subject, and that's marketing. Take me back to the very beginning of this. How were you marketing then? And what has the progression of your marketing looked like from then to now?
So when we first started, and it was hard because we didn't have a lot of money, but I had a vendor that was really excited because we put Ductless in our name. He met me and my partner, and they believed in us, and they actually helped us. But we were doing a lot of direct mail, specifically to one utility that was giving away a free system to people that were low income. And so I actually had people walking the streets and knocking on doors, to be honest with you. But we also got into some direct mail, and that direct mail at that time was very specific, and it would say, this is a free system, or if you do the loan, this is what it will cost. And they were offering one size at one price, and we were able to make that work and get a good profit margin. And so when we were very specific in our direct mail, that worked. And my vendor came to me and he said, what are you spending? And I said, well, when we can, we're doing about a $3,000 campaign. And he goes, okay, we're going to team up with this manufacturer, and we're going to give you send it to us, mention the manufacturer, we'll approve it. If we approve it, we're going to give you $6,000 more. So now you can do a $9,000 campaign. So they were doing a third. And they did it for me more than once. And I've been very loyal to that vendor ever since. But they're a pretty progressive company, and they really helped us. So in the beginning, it was a lot of that, and it was trade shows.
Yeah.
And this is kind of something I'll get into later. But with a trade show, people could feel and touch it, and they got to meet you. And we did a lot of trade shows all the way through up until COVID. But COVID kind of changed the world.
Yeah, no doubt.
So we're not doing as many as we used to, and that's not, we've changed it. Now we do. We always felt that the internet was going to be there, and we put a lot of money into the internet. Mm-hmm. We have a company that manages our website. We always are trying to get new content on there.
Right. So doing some content marketing, SEO, that sort of thing.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Lots of social media.
Okay.
We put ourselves out there quite a bit.
How about ads? Are you guys running Google ads or Yelp ads or anything like that?
We do run Google ads.
Okay.
We never have done Yelp, and I don't know if that's a mistake or not.
I mean, I can tell you what we see, and that is that, we usually get slightly better, not infinitely better, but we usually get a slightly better ROAS or return on ad spend from Yelp than we do from Google.
Huh. Okay.
But, and I'll caveat this, okay? But if you are using LSA, or you want your SEO to perform better, if you want your LSA to perform better, or you want your SEO to perform better, run Google ads. And we've seen where, we'll try to take a client and put them on Google's local services ads, and they just will get almost no volume, right? And if you got in early into LSA, then it's not a big deal, and you can, ultimately, you're doing just fine. But if you're a new client, or not a new client, but a new LSA subscriber, let's just say, and you are, and you just, you're trying to get somewhere, we find that it's just almost next to impossible to get more than a handful of leads a month. But we have seen where if you go and then start running Google ad spend alongside it, and it's obviously billing from the same Google ads account on the back end, we have seen where all of a sudden we'll go from getting 2-3 leads in a month. We throw a $2,500, $3,000 a month Google ads budget alongside it. And then we'll all of a sudden get 25, 30, 35 leads in a month through LSA at that cheaper price per lead. So, and then same thing with SEO, right? I'm not saying that running Google ads necessarily improves your rankings, but what it does give you more opportunity to do is, first of all, increase brand traffic, because anytime I'm out running a Google ad, maybe 80% of the time they're going to click on the Google ad, come to my landing page, kind of look around. But then what are they going to do? They're going to go back out to Google and they're going to type in your business name, right? And so that they can look at your reviews. And that's what we actually see, that in the conversion side of it. So, but let me stick to this first. Brand traffic, meaning how many times people are going out and typing in Alpine Ductless every single month, definitely impacts rankings, because Google's looking very heavily at brands to determine kind of who's the most authoritative and out there in these marketplaces, because Google has no idea what you're doing offline, right? You could be running a billboard, doing direct mail at $9,000 a month. They have no clue. But what they can measure is how many times somebody goes in and types your business name into their search engine every single month. So we have seen a direct correlation in terms of brand traffic increasing, along with SEO and organic traffic increasing. But then the second thing that happens is if you all of a sudden start running Google ads and you're sending it to your website, then the other big thing that Google is really looking at, and this has always been true, is they're looking at the user experience, right? They're looking at, did this solve this person's problem when they went out and typed in, ductless company near me, right? Or something to that effect. And so they're tracking the conversions on your website. And so all things being equal, if we're sending traffic, and especially because when we are sending traffic and it is at a high cost per click, we're always worried about those conversion rates, right? Because we don't want to send somebody to a poorly optimized page that's converting at like 5-10%. We want to be sending them to a page that's converting at 30, 35, even sometimes 40% of that traffic into actual leads, because Google is also very concerned about, making sure that they're dishing up organically the best results for a user and for that user's query. They are also looking very heavily at the conversion rate. And so we see Google Ads improving SEO performance then indirectly, both from the brand traffic that it generates, as well as improving the overall conversions of the website that just improves SEO as a whole. So, but to kind of circle back to Yelp, okay? Google ad, obviously if I'm running Yelp ads, I'm not going to get, the same, that same sort of SEO benefit, if you will, although it is certainly going to sometimes send, clicks out to our website, that sort of thing. But we do see better return on ad spend if we're just comparing what we can track through Google ads versus what we can track through Yelp ads. More often than not, Yelp outperforms Google in my experience.
Real. Yep. And I'll be honest with you, and this is probably a mistake on my part, and I try not to do this. I'll give you an example.
Sure.
When I was in the remodeling business, we sold nothing but, we did kitchens all the time. Mm-hmm. And Corian was out, but there wasn't the granites, and these solid surface countertops were just really getting started. But they had been out for a while, and we weren't selling them. We were selling nothing but laminate. And the main reason was none of us had solid surface. We had never experienced it. We knew laminate. I haven't chose to use Yelp, and I don't use it as a person. So I'm probably biased in not using it. And I think that's the hardest thing in marketing, is it's not about what you like or what you don't like. It's about what works.
You're exactly right.
You've got to put your biases aside.
Oh yeah. Well, and you've always got to be testing too. It's like, I obviously, I was asking you earlier when you graduated, and it was the same year that I was born, but I graduated in 1995, right? So I'm definitely a Generation X person. I did not grow up with the internet. I did not grow up with smartphones. And so, I still really dislike social media. I don't spend any time on it. And I also don't have a Yelp account because to me, that's more of a millennial thing. But I'm also, people your age are baby booming out, and I'm not, too far behind you, a generation behind you anyway. And the real reality is when we look down the line at who's coming up next, right? The Gen Zs and the Gen Alpha and all of these other things, they are so social media enabled, Reddit enabled, Yelp enabled, right? That we have to be looking at those things as marketers. And, even if you're like, well, I'm not a marketer, right? I sell ductless mini split systems. If you are a business owner, you are a marketer, period.
Yeah, you are. Had this saying ABA, which is always be advertising. I don't wear Daikin or a Mitsubishi. I sell lots of brands of ductless because I'm ductless only. So I sell Daikin and Mitsubishi. I won't wear their clothes. I wear Alpine ductless.
Yeah. Yeah. Why would you promote somebody else's brand?
Exactly. Those are brands I sell. Come to me and I'll help you buy the best system you can. Yeah, that's another saying that I got from a sales guru that I really liked years ago. But I don't sell you anything. I'm there to help you buy.
Right.
I'm
Right.
a ductless expert. Bring us in. We'll tell you everything. If you choose to buy, great.
Yeah, I feel the same way, honestly, when it comes to our business, it's like I have never successfully sold somebody on why they need to market. They either know and they're ready to go, or they are still trying to figure it out. And if that's true and they're still trying to figure it out, they're stuck doing word of mouth.
Right.
And that works for a while for a lot of companies, right? You can get to 2 to 3 trucks on word of mouth in the heating and air conditioning business. It is possible to do, and I've seen it happen. You can't get to 100. You can't get to 20 either. So it's a question of like how big do you want to go? So, but same kind of thing, right? Like we can't sell people marketing. You either want to market and you're looking for the best vendor to work with, or you just don't, and you don't allocate a budget for it because you're all above that stuff. And if you're above that stuff, you're just going to have a really small business, and that's okay. Everybody's got their own comfort level. So Corey, one of the questions that I have then, and because we're talking about riches being in the niches, and the one other point that I will say to that too is that, as you I'm sure already know, having Ductless in your business name, especially on Google My Business, is going to help you rank for anything ductless related. Okay. But with all of that said, talk to me about what your results have looked like. Because I know obviously you said, hey, our first 5 systems, I think, were in 6 months. What happened after that, and what's happened since?
We started in March. That's when March 12th, I put a system in my own house, and I was thinking about the company, and
What year?
Of 2012.
2012. Okay.
And I had created an LLC. We were getting ready to go, but we call March 12th, the day we put in the first system, is the day we started the company. And like I said, we put 3 in for ourselves, and we installed 3 for some people. So we were trying to get advertising out. We had no money. We had nothing. Then this Tacoma Power launched that grant program, and I had a guy that literally started knocking on doors and selling systems. So the month of August, after installing 6 systems in like 5 months, we installed 24 systems. And the month after that, it just kept going. Suddenly, I had one guy, an electrician, doing 2 a day.
Wow.
And at one point, we were actually installing 6 of those a day.
How many trucks were you running at this point?
We were running 3 trucks at that point, because we had 3 installers.
So you're doing two systems a day then per installer.
And actually, when it slowed down, one of those guys was an electrician. So when I needed him for HVAC, he knew how to do that. So he would do the HVAC side, and we would bring in an electrician to work with him. Because at the time, we weren't, Washington has some really hard electrical laws, and it's not just easy. You don't just go down and get a contractor license and start buying electrical permits. There's a process. So I was using subcontractors for years.
Sure.
And since then, I've got my own. But at the time, I would just bring in the subcontractor, and I'd tell him I need 3 guys tomorrow. Or actually, we had enough sales going with these free systems that we were booked out for 4 weeks. So I would send him on Wednesday the following week's calendar, and he would buy all the permits, and he would supply the electricians they needed. I had a great relationship with a really good electrician. I've always been really good with my guys, and if they get the job done, they've made me my money. So I always paid them 40 hours, no matter what they worked, as long as the installs got completed. And Fridays was always a light day, because between Olympia and Seattle, which is a 60-mile difference, and beyond, the traffic is horrendous, and especially on a Friday.
I've experienced that before, by the way. I know exactly what you're talking about.
My goal is, we're all here because we need to make money, and we like this business, and we feel like we're in if I really wanted to make money, I'd probably go buy a convenience store, but I don't want to be the guy that sells alcohol and tobacco to people. I like improving people's lives. I like making their homes better. I also treat my employees that same way. I want their lives to be good. So I guarantee them 40 hours as long as they show up for work 5 days. But if they only work till noon, they still get paid for 8 hours. And that way, their lives are consistent, and they're not working all this overtime in August and then starving in February. They know they can make their car payment. They know they can make the house payment because they have a consistent paycheck. When they do go into overtime, I give them the overtime. But for the most part, if they got the job done, and I used to have guys go out and put in 2 systems and be on their way back from Tacoma at like 2 in the afternoon. And they left the shop at 7:30 and, got it all done and they're home early. And so it makes a nice life for them, but I don't have hiring problems. I've hired good people and I don't lose them. I've lost one guy in this whole time to a competitor.
No kidding. Wow.
I've had to let people go, and I've had people move away or transition out because they want to do something different. But nobody went and said, I'm going to go work for ABC Heating because I don't like you anymore.
Huh. That's absolutely fantastic. And how many trucks are you running now, and how many installs are you guys averaging on a day at this point?
We used to do these single zone systems that had really short line sets, so they could do 2 a day. Now I might have 3 people out doing one system for 3 days because it's a big whole house remodel, and we're pulling system, and we're pulling line set all the way across the house and through the attic and everything. But on average, I would say we're doing 8 to 12 systems a week. I have 5 installers in 3 trucks. And then I have 2 electricians in 2 trucks. And then I have 3 service techs.
Wow.
And then we've got an operations manager and 3 other people plus myself in the office.
Okay. So how many employees total then?
17.
17.
And I left out my 2 salesmen that are out selling mostly HVAC. The electricians are selling the electrical.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, that makes a lot of sense to me. And what do you guys expect to do in annual revenue this year?
This year, I think we're going to come in at about 3.5. We had a bad year last year for a multitude of reasons. We took on a new software system, and I don't recommend that to anybody, but sometimes you have to.
Taking on a new system or the one that you installed?
We didn't have a service software. And so we needed a service software that would work out in the field, like us. We used Field Pulse. But in doing that, we had a really good accounting and inventory software that was actually locally made here, and they've only sold it to about 5 people. And it was the easiest, best system I've ever seen. But Phil Pulse would not talk to us. So at the start of 2024, we went back to QuickBooks. And it's literally taken 18 months to really get a good handle on that. And somebody told me it would, and I said, no, it'll be about 4 months. And they were completely right. I was wrong.
Well, you never know until you do, right?
Right. But that caused us that I have good control of our numbers. And so we had too many electricians at the time. We weren't set up to sell electrical correctly. And we had them because we could get them because they're hard to find.
Yeah.
But we just made some changes and improved things. And this year's been much better. So I think we'll close this year out about $3.5 million. And then we've joined an organization called Certain Path, and it's kind of steering us down the road. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm a carpenter, and so is my operations manager. And my wife, who's now in the company, Mike left in 2016. And my wife, Jeanette, came and joined me as a partner. But the 3 of us are kind of the management team. But we're 2 carpenters and a school teacher, and we're now competing against venture capital firms that are buying up our competition. And so we went to Certain Path and got some coaching, and we're changing certain things, and we're starting to that's starting to take off. And I think we're going to see over the next couple of years a minimum of 20% growth.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's absolutely wonderful. You brought up something that we haven't really touched on yet. That is private equity. That is this, the trend, right, of the massive roll up in we'll just say the MEP space, but really the home services space altogether, right? MEP for our layman listeners, that's mechanical, electrical, plumbing, right? You usually see those 3 really packaged together. I guess the question that I have for you is how have you, well, firstly, how have you seen private equity or this roll up that's happening in your area really affect, I would say, you in terms of competition? And then, what is your exit strategy? Is there a potential acquisition in the future?
There could certainly be an acquisition with a venture capital firm, and I've talked to a few of them. There's nobody in mind right now. I get hit up with emails probably on average 3 times a week. And a couple of times I've answered them just to see what was going on. And there's all kinds of different ones. Some of them will just buy you and you're out the door right away. There's another one in Seattle, actually, that buys heating companies. And what they do is they just want at least 51%. But they want you to stay in place and keep managing it, or
Yep.
have that manager there. And all they're really looking to do is give you that admin support, if you will,
Yep.
maintain your numbers and keep your manager there, but they'll have a regional manager that's kind of overlooking you. So you give up your control of the company and you have to kind of meet their things, but at the same time, you can stay in it and do that. Another thing that we're looking at, I can't say we have a strategy. Last year was a big setback. The other thing that happened to me last year was I had a really serious injury and it put me in a recliner for 4 months. And so I was just working from my living room and not coming in, and I was somewhat off the ball, especially when we didn't have good numbers to work from. But I fell off a ladder, and I never go out in the field. I went out in the field, I fell off a ladder and thought I had broke my foot. And I told my wife maybe I only sprained it. And the next day I had rods sticking out of it and trusses holding it in place. And
Oh no.
yeah, I did a really bad job on it. So that was, all things totaled, it was just a terrible year for us. On top of all of that, the market declined last year. So
Right.
it's all better. We're getting better. We're on more of a straightforward path. I believe in coaching, especially if you're not owned by a venture capital firm, you better have some people behind you that know how they work and how you should work, and get some people that are very experienced in your space and use them and adopt their ways and be open-minded about it. I mean, sometimes they tell me to do things and I'm like, okay, I'll try it. I told you I'd try it, I'll try it. And all of a sudden I go, wow, that worked. That's pretty cool.
For me, that is one of the things that I absolutely love about this industry. The trades themselves, the home services, because there's just such a free and giving flow of information out there. And it is not uncommon at all to hear about, say an HVAC company from Utah flying out to visit you in Washington to learn your secret sauce, right? And share, because who cares, right? And even market to market, a few months back, I was out here at Any Hour for a big walkthrough that they did. And I know you kind of come from the Utah area initially, and so maybe you know who they are, but they've since started their own private equity firm and are kind of doing something similar to what I think you are, where they want to keep in the owners as essentially general managers of that particular business unit, right, in the area. But it was cool to me to go and attend this and see probably 20 different plumbing and heating and air conditioning companies there, learning all of the, maybe not all, right, but like much of the secret sauce, if you will, that has turned this company into a $120 million a year company. And they are definitely the big boy on the block when it comes to MEP contractors here in the state of Utah. And to me, that's what I absolutely love is that, and frankly, it's also why I wanted to really start and run this particular podcast is so that we can get people on to talk about their success, to talk about what they're doing, to really mastermind, if you will, and that free flow of information and general willingness to help elevate the industry as a whole, as well as other people in it, I think is an absolute testament, if you will, to just how much the blue collar workforce it really is like the backbone of our economy, but just a good general supportive place to put your energy, right, to put your career and all of that. And I love that we're starting to now see trades coming back into the schools. When I was coming up as a youngster, right, it was go be a doctor or a lawyer. I decided to be an entrepreneur for better or worse. And partly because my dad was, but I'm telling people all the time now, it's like, that trend has shifted and you can go get in a whole bunch of debt to become a lawyer. And a journeyman plumber is gonna beat you out income wise and doesn't have a whole bunch of debt.
You
So
know, I took a class, I think it was around 2016. I took an electrical class for 3 days, and there was a young kid in there. I was sitting next to him, and he kind of told me his story. He was in Bellevue, Washington, which is where, that's pretty much where Bill Gates lives. That's where all the tech companies in Washington are. So it's a very high-end area. But he said, I went to work as a union electrician at 18. And he said, I just got my journeyman license recently, but I'm studying to get my administrator's license, which will allow him to buy permits, which you have to have in order to be a company. And he said, I'm 24 years old. I'm going to now take some business classes. And at 28, I'm starting my own company. But he goes, I have a brand new 4-wheel drive Ford truck. I've got my own place to live. I make $96,000 a year. I have a retirement account. And he says, all of my friends are graduating college and they're in debt, $100 to $250,000.
what
And he
I'm
goes,
making annually.
and he goes, I got cash. Anytime somebody wants to go do something, I don't have debt, And he says, I love the trade. And I mean, you tell that to a parent, they're going to go, wait a minute, I need to rethink this college thing.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Corey, I mean, this has been really just a wonderful conversation, and thank you so much for sharing your success and some of the strategies that you use. For me, the thing that I love about green, anything green, right, is they usually have rebates and other things, and it makes those sales, I think, so much easier. I think that's an incredible strategy. If somebody were coming out of, say, being a general contractor or just coming out of school or whatever and wanted to, jump into the HVAC space, and more particularly, say, hey, I actually really want to niche down and just focus on, say, ductless as an example, what advice would you give that person in terms of just how to go about avoiding as many mistakes as possible and shortcutting the path to success?
Learn as much as you can about it from the actual manufacturers or distributors or the guys that are doing it well. Ductless is all we've ever done, and oftentimes my service techs know more than they solve problems that other guys can't, and we a lot of times know more than even the distributors. So you have to know your product. And we dove in, but we dove in, the opportunity was there, we thought it was right, not knowing what we were doing. I would have learned more about it going forward, even as simple as the proper way to pump down, because we used to do it the way most people do it, and we've learned much better ways, and it's faster and better, and we get better results, and we have less problems. So you've got to learn everything you can about it. Make sure you have a bookkeeper, and a good bookkeeper. It should be the first person you ever hire. Before you sell anything, get a bookkeeper, and they get a salesman. I mean, that was the one thing we did. We hired a salesman. And I had a construction company, so when the remodels did show up, or when the installs did show up, I had one guy that I would send to go do it, and we did them together in the beginning. But don't be scared of it, but learn everything you can. And remember, I live by this rule. I try to live by this rule. I have to remind myself sometimes, but my only competition is myself.
Oh, hear, hear.
I mean, that's it. And like you were saying earlier, there's all these people sharing information. All the information is out there. You just have to go get it. And I actually believe in sharing the secrets, if you will, because I think it raises the bar and it gets everybody on a similar page. So now you're just buying from the company you feel best with.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. So thank you for that. I think that is just invaluable advice, and I love the idea too of just learning everything you can about the business, and part of the reason I like to do what I like to do is because, at least in marketing and search engine optimization, all these different things, it is such a moving target. It is so wildly different now, especially with the proliferation of AI, than it was 20 years ago when I first started ranking websites on Google. And what a fun thing to have to be on this path of continual learning. But I love the definition of an expert just being somebody who's made every mistake possible in a very small field.
Yeah.
you know, so I completely agree with your strategy. There is the point. Once again, this is the Home Services Marketing Podcast. From growth to acquisition. My name is Adam Lovers with Blue Forge Marketing. I've been joined here today by Corey Eckert with Alpine Ductless out of Olympia, Washington. Corey, thanks again so much for coming on the show here today and for sharing your experience. Till the next time, friends, keep out there, keep marketing, keep building your business, and I look forward to talking to you soon.